Hello
Hello
and
and
welcome
welcome.
to the Turn 4 podcast. I am your host, Dan Maldonado. I am your host, Dan Maldonado. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. This podcast gives a fan's perspective on IndyCar and other forms of motorsport. Let me introduce you to my co host, Tim Reiner. Hey, Timmy.
Hey, Dan, how are you?
I'm good. You know why you jumped the gun on that one, Tim? You started doing the intro with me? Because
Because you
today's
said I was,
episode is you. You are
that's
in
what I
charge of
hear.
today's episode. Yeah.
And that's why I thought I was
I should have
going
let you do
and,
that.
and
Yeah.
introducing myself, but it was the same old introduction, which is totally fine.
I can't help myself,
So
Tim.
you're going to kick it over to me now, right?
Totally. I can't help
All
myself,
right.
Tim. You know, my ego is such.
Well, I know that. We all have a little bit of an ego. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing, and we wouldn't
Never
be
said I
doing
had
what
a
we're doing
little
in
ego.
our professional lives, too.
That's right.
You got to have a little bit of an ego.
That's right.
So before we get started today, right,
Yeah.
I want to talk to you, Dan.
Me?
You
What did I
were,
do?
dare I
Am I in
say
trouble?
it, back home in Indiana.
I was.
Mind, yeah, mind sharing a little bit about your experience, what you did?
I could talk a little bit about it. Had a chance to go to the Big Ten championship game to watch the Michigan Wolverines take on the Purdue Boilermakers at Lucas Oil Stadium, home of the
The
Colts
stadium or field?
field, whatever they call it. It's a
Maybe
nice, it's a
stadium.
nice
I
place
don't
to be,
know.
by the way. It's really
I've been
nice.
right next to it. I've never been inside of it.
Yeah, I've been in there a few times. I generally go to the Championship every year, as part of what I do in my day job, um, a job that I love, of course, but um, it's part of something that I do there. I get a chance to go to that every year, entertain some clients there, and have fun. And you know, our company's part of the tuition throw, and so we get to meet the kids that
Yeah.
are throwing for that, and that's always a lot of fun too. So had a good time at that. I didn't make it last year, come to think of it, but ran out there this year. Had a really nice time. We were back to what I would suspect to be pre-pandemic levels. You know, it looked like it was back in 2019. So it was good to see everybody
Yeah.
together there. It was a good game. I think it was probably closer than a lot of people on the Michigan side expected that to be. Purdue has nothing to lose. They earned their spot there. They earned a chance to be there, and they were gonna showcase their talents and who they were on primetime TV. That game was long though, man. It went till
Hmm.
what was it? Almost. I mean, it was almost midnight, and you know, I was well into pumpkin phase for me. I would have been in bed at least an hour and a half by then. But
You didn't bail? I know normally you
no,
bail midway.
I stayed to the bitter end.
Oh, wow. Well,
Stayed to
good.
the
And you
bitter
wore
end.
your
Yeah,
Michigan shirt? Is that correct? I thought I
I
saw you
did.
wearing a Michigan shirt.
Yep, I did.
Very good. So
So had a good
second
time.
in the college football standings and going to the national championship game or,
Fiesta
the
Bowl
pre.
to take on TCU, who
Very
is
nice.
actually somebody I know that is their alma mater. So he's excited to see that
Is
happen.
it who I think it is?
No,
No, it's not. Okay.
no.
Very good.
So, but
Well,
yeah,
good.
very exciting. I'm not going to that. This will be that was, you know, my one football game a year for what I do. So
Did you get to see the track? Did you go by any of the IndyCar stuff, or was it just strictly in and out
I
for
did
the
not.
game?
I did not. I saw the Indy cars. They had them at the convention center where FanFest was. They had two cars out there, and that was it. Actually, a colleague and her husband went to the track. It was the first time for them to be in that market, and her husband was excited to go to the speedway, so they went to the museum, and just how
Did they take the
totally
bus
cool they
around the
thought that
track?
was, and they took the bus trip around the track, so
Oh
they
my
were just
goodness.
excited to see that, and it was pretty cool. So and it was
All
good
right.
cool to
Well,
hear somebody
good.
come in from uh, a very unrelated IndyCar market, not necessarily IndyCar fans, but came there because, of course, they know the speedway, they know the history of the Indy 500, and they were anxious to go. So it was pretty cool.
Good. Good, good, good. Glad you were out there and got to enjoy the game. And you're back here in Michigan with the
Mhm.
rest of us. So thanks for joining us tonight. So today we're going to focus on the latest news around IndyCar. It's a long off-season break, as everybody knows, and plus we're in the holiday season. With Thanksgiving now behind us, we look forward to celebrating to the celebrations in December. So let's get to it. Let's get to the IndyCar news, Dan. First, let's start off with Hy-Vee and Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing officially announced that Christian Lundgaard will represent Hy-Vee throughout the 2023 season. This is what we expected 2 weeks ago, but it's now a reality. My question to you, Dan, though, now that this is, set in stone and everything's going on, what does the future hold for Jack Harvey?
Next question.
Next question. Dan does not want to comment on this. I think it's very interesting. He's very passionate about this.
Yeah, I was apoplectic in episode 50, which was 2 weeks ago, right at this last one. I think we were official then, but I'm actually appreciate you bringing this back up today, because I do want to take a minute to more rationally try to explain my feelings on this, considering my disastrous attempt 2 weeks ago. So the first thing I want to say is, I'm sad that that's the reality of this, but I understand that it's the reality of business. When you're talking what could very well be a $10 million investment on behalf of Hy-Vee, including what they're doing at Iowa and all the activation in store and, a full season sponsorship, which, I mean, honestly, Tim, there's not a lot of full season sponsorships out there. If you think about it, even at Team Penske, right? The only team that is fully right, that has a full season sponsorship there is Verizon with Will Power. And there's not a lot of full season sponsorships out there anymore.
You're right.
That are just one company. So I guess I understand Hy-Vee's perspective. If that was a decision that they asked Ray Hall to accommodate, I would understand that. I will tell you, I think it's a shame, because I think that, Jack comes into a new team, as did Christian. Jack comes into a new team, high expectations. I think he struggled to get around the handling of that car, as did Christian, as did Graham. That just Christian and Graham were able to come to terms with a little bit sooner. But I do want to bring up something, and I don't want to make it look like I'm making a lot of excuses, but I think something that I heard this weekend driving to and from Indianapolis made sense to me. And it did make me think of Jack's situation. If you remember, Jack Harvey had a pretty big crash at Texas and had a concussion, and he was held out of the event and, was cleared to drive shortly thereafter. Correct. Townsend Bell, who does the NBC broadcast, was on Dinner with Racers podcast, which I like. And I was listening to that while I was driving to Indianapolis. And he talked about a concussion that he suffered in a crash in Champ Car at Motegi. And it had, in his words, and I'm paraphrasing, impacted a large portion of his season. And in fact, he was driving for Patrick Racing, had this crash at Motegi, was concussed, suffered several more crashes in the aftermath of that, and subsequently was fired from his ride at Patrick Racing, I think 5 or 6 races into the season. Into a 3-year contract at Patrick Racing, and was fired at this. And here's where I thought of Jack. He said it was a bit of a relief, because he needed to go and rest and get his head right. Jack was held out of Texas for all the right reasons in the world. We've seen NASCAR drivers this year hold themselves out and be held out from events following big crashes. There were some problems with this new car. That's not a secret in NASCAR. And of course, the long-term effects that Dale Jr., suffered from concussions, and, was very vocal about it, and was probably one of the first to really speak about it as candidly as he did prior to retiring from full-time driving. Tim, I can't help but feel that perhaps there was some lingering long-term or longer-term effects of Jack's Texas crash that may not have presented itself in a way that suggested Jack needed to hold himself out of subsequent races after Texas, but could have put him a little bit behind. And I'll give you a personal example. Okay. Your son, one of your sons plays football. My son never played football. My son was a swimmer. And you think, oh, that's pretty safe, right? It's not full contact. That's pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan had an accident in practice, swimming backstroke, which is what he was, and hit the side of the pool. And he came home. We knew what happened. My wife had to go get him, brought him home, and he looked like he was like, I don't want to use this term, but he looked like he was stoned out of his mind. I mean, he did not look right. He was talking real slow. His eyes weren't open right. That was a swimming accident. It was pretty bad. He had a mild concussion is how it was diagnosed once we finally made it to the emergency room. Mild concussion. He had a good 3 months of recovery from that. He had trouble being in the pool. He had trouble with motion sickness. He had trouble with light sensitivity, sudden motion, and things that he would see suddenly would bring him back to this, these concussion symptoms. So not making an excuse for Jack. I'm not, I'm a little aggravated by how this thing all went down. But I think 2023 will be the year to tell, right? If Jack can get himself, first of all, it starts with the team, because I think that team is I think that team is underperforming what appears to be a solid program, a solid mid, pack program. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see Jack get back to it. Hopefully this off season will help him get back to it. Hopefully this situation doesn't play psychologically on his mind where he's going to overdrive and he's going to do silly things thinking he has to save his ride. But I hate how that happened. I hate how that went down, and we'll hope the best, I think, for Jack in 23.
Yeah, and I think we both wish him the best here this season, and I think he'll do well. I know the season's still a little ways off, but it could explain, the fall off in performance that he had for the year. And I know the team wasn't performing at a great, super high level themselves. So, all around, I think there's work to be done there. And hopefully Jack comes back strong and represents the third car. We'll call it the third car, right, in the lineup. And it does well for the sponsors as well as for his career. We like to see him in the series for sure.
Yeah.
So other related news to
kind of bothers me a little bit about the outlook for Rahal Letterman Lanigan in 2023, though, is the departure unconfirmed of their team president, Pierce Phillips. Marshall Pruitt was reporting that that Pierce Phillips had left the team with neither the team nor Phillips confirming, but multiple sources, enough so that Marshall put it on racer.com. Marshall Pruitt's not a rookie. Yeah. He's not a dum-dum. So if Marshall's putting it out there, it means something. There's a lot of things going on at Rahal Letterman Lanigan right now, right? They're the lead team for the BMW LMDH program. They have this IndyCar program. They want to add a fourth car to the Indy 500, which, again, I don't understand. And they had openly discussed, Graham had openly discussed last year that their engineering department was a little behind in resources, not necessarily financial resources, but people resources. And now the head on your horse is gone. Yeah. So they should wonder what's going on over there.
It almost seemed like that individual was more focused on the BMW program and what was going on there, but I'm sure it impacts
came from sports
the whole IndyCar side of the team too.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens on that front and who they put in that position to replace once things are all said and done. So on to other related news with Hy-Vee. Is the stellar lineup of the concerts at the Iowa doubleheader this weekend, not this weekend, but their doubleheader weekend that's coming up this summer, a good thing for fans? It comes with a very hefty price for people to go and see the race. Ticket prices are 100% higher than last year, and even more in some instances. Was last year such a deal that now costs are aligned? That's really the question. And will the new price really kill this event? Kind of looking for your insight here on this, Dan.
I hope not. What I would tell you is supply and demand, right? Obviously, they know what the numbers are and what that demand are, for their tickets. Is it a great value? Oh man, without a doubt, right? You're seeing, two performances on each day plus the IndyCar race. That's a tremendous value, but and I put this on Twitter too. Value's kind of in the, eye of the wallet holder, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
for
if I
sure.
just want to go to a race, I don't really care about the rest of that, the concerts or whatever. I just want a reasonable ticket,
Yeah.
right? 70, $80
That was
a
evident
day
when
or
we went to
something.
Austin, right? There were
Yeah.
concerts going on the whole time, and we didn't see a single concert
No, we didn't. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
because we
And
were there for the racing. We're race fans.
exactly. And was long day already, right? And we had a 40-minute drive
Mhm.
to where we were staying, and we had that long walk to the parking, and then we had to get on a shuttle and to get to our car and things like that. So
Yeah.
those were super long days. Those and did that make or break what we decided to go to that race? No. I'm sure there's some people that are going to go to Iowa thinking this is right up my alley, 100% of what I'm looking for. If I were going to Iowa, and I'm not, if I were going to Iowa, I don't know that I would stay for any of those concerts. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, some of them are pre, some of them are post. I think the idea with Iowa, it's right there in front of you, right? At Austin, we had to go and to the other stage way down
Yeah. Yeah.
yonder. But
I know it
if it's
wasn't
there
even
in
the
front of you,
stage
I
that
think
was
you,
easy to get to. Remember, like at Austin, right? It wasn't even in that center stage. It was off
it was
behind that
super
hairpin or
far
whatever,
away.
like turned 11 or something. So yeah, it
It was like
was.
herding cattle to get there, and we just turned around
Yeah.
and said, "We're not doing this."
Yeah.
No way. I think in Iowa, it's a little more intimate because you got the oval, you got everything going on there, and so from that perspective, you be able to sit there and watch, right? Because
Yeah.
you're right there in the front grandstand, and they're right there. From what I saw from pictures, they're right there on the pit lane and the little grass area right in between the racetrack and the pit lane. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they're pricing themselves out.
Me
Personally, I
too.
think you're going to see a lot of people that are not going to show up. Twitter was sort of blowing up when they. It sounds like they published a price and then they went back and changed that price. And so a lot of season ticket holders, if you want to call them season ticket holders, I know it's only the second year, went to renew their tickets and it was more than double the price, which is,
Yeah.
geez, I don't know. I don't know if they can command that sort of dollar in order to get people there, but maybe people will go. Maybe it'll attract new fans. Maybe people are going for the concerts rather than for the race, which would be really interesting. And they're there
Yeah.
to, take it all in and soak it in. And maybe you gain some new viewers through that. So I think
Maybe
time
it's
will tell on
marketing,
this, but
right?
it's
You have a marketing degree. I don't, but I mean, it's inducing trial, right? It's
mhm,
it's it's people that would not otherwise be willing to try IndyCar and
mhm,
be able to go out there and see that. So it's inducing trial. So maybe it'll keep some eyes on the series when they go home, and they know that the series will be racing in Toronto or whatever, and it'll be on NBC or what have you. And although
mhm.
Toronto's on Peacock, that's a bad example, but that's so yeah, inducing trial. But you got to pay for your own trial at that point. So I don't, you know what I'm saying? It's odd to me that they would go up this dramatically year over year. And I think I texted to you, when we were discussing this prior to this was, I mean, worst case scenario here is it buyer's remorse from Hy-Vee.
It could be.
There's a
Yeah,
change in leadership at Hy-Vee after last year. So, I mean, anything's possible. It's a
they could be
private
looking at the
company, so we don't
books
know
and
their
saying, you know what,
situation. Yeah.
there's yeah, yeah, there's could be a lot of things going on in that situation there, but uh, we'll see it. We'll see if the fans show up. We'll see what happens on that front. But the ticket prices are pretty steep, but you get a lot of different forms of entertainment if you go there. You get racing,
Yeah.
you get concerts, you get the whole nine yards. And it sounds like if you're there for one race, you're there for two races, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like you can buy individual days, is what I sort of saw. So, sort of moving on, Dan, Chip Ganassi Racing announced their new driver, Marcus Armstrong, essentially replacing Jimmy Johnson, who's now an owner at Petty Enterprises. This is another driver from New Zealand coming from Formula Two,
Which I think is pretty
three
cool.
seasons in Formula Two, by the way,
Mhm.
driving only street and road courses in the number 11 entry for Chip Ganassi Racing.
Yeah.
Oval driver still to be confirmed. That hasn't been announced. Uh, but so this makes me think a few things. First, that I think Jimmy Johnson will run a fifth entry for Chip Ganassi Racing in the 48 for the 500, right? So
I
first,
don't
I guess my question, you don't think so?
know. I think it's be tricky for him to try to crawl into a Honda after being a Chevy team owner.
Hmm. I think it opens the door, though. He's still got that door open there. He's still got a sponsor. So maybe he can work something out. I don't think the battle is that tough between two series that he wouldn't be able to slip into a Honda, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right. Time will tell. But are you happy with Marcus joining,
I
or are
am.
you disappointed it's not Latifi? And you said if you were
I
Latifi,
am.
you would be in there a minute. So,
Yeah.
um, what do you think?
Well, I mean, just to talk about Nicholas Latifi, I guess I understand that he, leaving Formula One, and he probably wants to gauge what his interests are. And you know what? He took a lot of shots this year too. As we know, I mean, it's quite possible that he probably thought, yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that, but maybe we just take a year off and see what comes of it, and see what he can do. Maybe in sports cars or in WEC, or maybe give any car a shot, because you never know where that goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and the oval thing, right, generally bothers these European drivers. Marcus is coming from what, F2, right? Yeah, so he's
Yeah,
coming
that's
over
correct.
from F2, and he's not going to run the ovals. So
Correct. So that
we'll
leaves an
see what
oval
happens
seat
there.
open.
Yeah, which it wouldn't be Sato, because we know. Well, we haven't gotten confirmation yet, but it sounds like what we've heard from Marshall, and I think Kevin Lee's even done it on his show, that he talked about Sato doing an ovals only program in some sports cars, not necessarily with coin, but he's going to do an oval only program with coin.
Well, it's the perfect spot to go if you're just doing an oval program. And you could do it with Coin, right? But Coin's looking for a full-time driver,
He
and
is
so
he is
is
as well. Yeah.
Pugo. So you got those two teams that are still looking for a full-time driver. So there's only
Mm.
two seats left when it comes to full-time in IndyCar. And you think Sato would go over there and just run ovals, and they put someone else in street courses? But I think it's a perfect fit to go to Chip Ganassi Racing. I think he has budget. He brings budget. Chip was looking for somebody with budget, and he's a proven winner twice at the Indianapolis 500. So
Yeah.
um,
Chip
I think
Chip
it's
Ganassi is the perfect landing spot for anybody. It doesn't matter, who it is or what your program
mhm.
is. If you wanna land somewhere and you want to shine, Chip
Yeah,
Ganassi Racing is the place to go.
it's a great program for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And Coin's no slouch. I told you that, right? 2 years ago. If I were Roman
Yeah.
Grosjean, I don't know that I'd leave Coin right now. I'd wait and see what my options were after another year.
Mm-hmm. And boy,
So
he would have had options for
he
sure.
would have.
Yep, definitely.
Bird in the hand versus two in the bush, right? He had a contract with Andretti
Mm-hmm.
versus take another year, and you never know what happens.
Yep.
So, but
So sticking with Chip
I'm
Ganassi
happy with
Racing.
that, though. Let me say that I am
Oh,
happy
you
with
are?
that, because I take this as a win for IndyCar, right? All we want to talk about is how happy everybody is with Formula One, and Formula One's growing, and they're hey, we got a guy who's leaving the series, their ladder series, because he doesn't see a path to Formula One there. He's coming to IndyCar.
It'll be interesting to watch to see how he does. You know,
Hmm.
you're slotting yourself into a very competitive car. You've got a ton of experience when it comes to road courses, maybe not so much on street courses, but at the end of the day, um, you're going to be muscling an IndyCar around, which they say is much heavier and bigger and harder to drive when it comes
Yeah,
to
no power steering.
just manhandling the vehicle, if you will. So from that perspective, we'll see how he does. I think there's going to be some bright spots for sure. I don't know how you can go wrong with going with Chip Ganassi Racing. So I'm excited about it. I'm actually relieved it's not Latifi. I was
Yeah,
a little nervous that Latifi was coming over, but
yeah.
um, it doesn't look like he will. I don't think he would go to any of the other teams that have openings. So at this point, he's going to be looking for different rides or doing, sports car, what it might be. So
Tim, I'd
I'm
put you in
happy
the
with the
top
choice
10
as well.
at Gateway in a Chip Ganassi prepared Honda.
You're going to put me in the top 10?
I would.
Oh my gosh. Too
That's how much
old.
confidence I'd have in Chip Ganassi Racing.
Yeah.
I don't think I
Well,
would fit in an IndyCar, so I can't really say I would do it. But I,
well,
I
sign
think
me
you
up.
would. I
I'll
think
I'll
you
do
could.
it if
Yeah.
if Chip wants to put me in there. I'm kind of a winner, so let's do it.
I'm kind of a winner.
Kind of a winner. So let's stay with Chip Ganassi Racing. They've secured American Legion as
I
their
want the
primary.
episode to be called "I'm kind of a winner."
I'm kind of a winner.
I'm kind of a
Well,
winner.
kind of, kind of a loser. You're somewhere in the middle, right? You win some, you lose some.
I'm kind of
So
okay.
I'm kind of okay. I'm kind of drinking my water. It's kind of here.
I
So,
had a delivery.
oh, you had your coffee. You always get your
Yeah.
coffee mid-show. And I don't know if we're mid-show yet, but we'll see how it goes.
It's mid-show enough. It was coffee
Yeah.
time.
So sticking with Chip Ganassi Racing, they secured American Legion as their primary sponsor for the number 10 car driven by Alex Palou. This is for obviously next year. It's great news. I think it's great news that they're sticking around, but how do you market this? It's one
That
of those things like, does American Legion go primary sponsor of the number 10 car driven by IndyCar driver and F1 reserve driver for
yeah.
McLaren, Alex Palou?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, first of all, I'm, you know, I'm stunned that, an organization like American Legion would have, like, I guess, the national budget to step up to, sponsoring an IndyCar or having enough to say that they're going to be a full-time sponsor in IndyCar. I just don't know how that happens.
Yeah, I don't know how they do that either. In my opinion, it isn't good. NTT they're already gone from Chip Ganassi Racing, right? And you got American Legion
Yes.
stepping in, which I'm very happy for. American Legion. I just don't know if I'd put my name on the car. There's got to be a lot of stuff going on in that team and with Alex. And
I know
as I
you're
mentioned, he was
okay.
just,
So what we're dancing around here is you have a hard time with the idea that Palou's going to run full time for Ganassi and IndyCar, but he's been named a McLaren reserve driver, and is likely going to be a McLaren IndyCar driver in 2024. That's what we're dancing
Mhm.
around here, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he's still on contract to race full time for Chip Ganassi Racing. So, he's going to be competitive. He's going to probably win one or two races next year again. He's going to continue to show well. He's good in front of the sponsors. He's good in front of a crowd. You saw him. We saw him at Detroit. He
Yep. I
checks
did.
all the boxes, right? And he's going to do just fine. He's going to earn every penny of what Chip's going to pay him. He's going to earn every penny of what, the non-for-profit American Legion's going to pay Chip Ganassi Racing for that exposure. And he's going to get all the B2B that he's supposed to do on a national basis, I'm sure, right?
Mhm.
Whether or not he's the McLaren reserve driver in Formula One, yeah, it's bizarre, but it's not unprecedented. Because if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, when Marcus Ericsson came over here, he was a reserve driver for some Formula One team when he started in his career in IndyCar. Pietro
Okay.
Fittipaldi, who is somebody who wants to, I think, is got kind of a long shot for one of the coin rides, is also a Formula One reserve driver, and he would be a Formula One reserve driver in that role as well. I think the part that we have a problem here with is Alex is a former IndyCar champion. He's a higher profile driver in a higher profile team. So how the hell do you allow this to happen, Chip? It is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the nature of the business. I don't have any
Yeah,
problems with it. I know it bothers you. It doesn't do anything for me,
it
though.
does bother me.
I
And
know.
I think the logical choice is you put Pato Award as the reserve driver, not Alex Palou,
There's
who's
got
not
to be
even
a
on your
reason, though,
team.
why they didn't take Award as their reserve driver. They've already seen him twice in the car. They know
Mm-hmm.
who he is because he's already in the team, and they know
Mm-hmm.
what he represents, right? I mean, you have two Spanish drivers in Formula One, so it's not like you're saying, well, we need a Spanish driver to help bolster our thing there. You have one Mexican driver in the series now with Checo, right? With Perez.
Mm-hmm.
You could do well with another Mexican driver, which would be, and he's also great in front of the camera and he's fiery and everything else. There's some reason why McLaren chose not to put him in that role.
I do. And you think it's based on skill and what they saw in the car. I think it's still
I think
the
it's
carrot
skill and
dangling and
package.
over.
I think it's
I
package. He's not as
Yeah.
polished as Palou. He's not as accomplished as Palou. Right, and there's no arguing that.
Mm-hmm. No, there isn't. That's why I
Yeah.
didn't say anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, that to me, those are your two reasons, right?
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to Zach Brown and still dangling the carrot too, and saying you're
Possibly
part of the team, and so
to make sure he
it's a way
signed.
to show that, yeah, to make sure he signs next year and he comes over to McLaren and that he doesn't stay with Ganassi. It doesn't. All indication is he's not staying, but at the
Right.
same time, I think I think that's could be one of the reasons. But I'm sure from Pato Ward's perspective, like he's got to be a little, shunned, thinking that how did Alex Palou, who's not even on the team, get called to be the reserve driver while, somebody who's racing for against us in a very competitive Chip Ganassi Racing group is their F1 reserve driver. It just seems a little off to me.
It is.
That's why I
It
brought it up.
is. Some reason though,
Yeah.
Chip agreed to it and felt that he
Somehow,
won.
some way to keep him
Yeah.
on the team for this year, he had to agree to all that.
Yeah.
All right. So Penske Entertainment has severed ties with IndyCar's VP of Marketing, SJ. Do you want to pronounce that for me?
I'm just gonna say SJ Ludke.
Ludke. She was hired prior to Penske buying the series and track. Remember last week when we spoke about backlash of Rogers' ownership and marketing prowess? Do you think they're listening to our show, Dan? I'm saying that jokingly, right? They're listening to our show and moving on.
I think they are.
But seriously, though, I'm not sure if this helps or hurts the series. Thoughts? She's a former Nike executive as well, and
Mhm.
I know there was a lot of hoopla when she came on board. And it sounds like they're pivoting, moving a different direction. And I wonder how this impacts, what's going on in the States with Formula One. It's growing so popular, and they're doing a lot of activations and promotions, and you got 3 races now here in the States, and I think IndyCar is feeling a little bit of the pressure from that, and how do they up their game? And this might be one way to try to mix it up and see if they can bring someone else in.
Yeah. We talked about egos in the beginning of this show, and I would tell you that even my ego would say I would take a pass on that job if they offered it to me. And I'm gonna tell you why, and I'm gonna back up a little bit. Do you remember Gene Simmons' marketing program with Tony George and the IRL, the We Are Indy or I Am Indy? Remember that? I Am IndyCar. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Yeah. So while in Indy this week, we stopped at this bar. It's amazing chicken wings, amazing pizza. I'll say it here: Keystone Sports Review on Keystone Boulevard and right outside Indianapolis. We stopped in there. There was a guy sitting in the next booth from us, and he was wearing one of those hats from way back when. And this is easily 15 years ago, but it said "Yo soy Indy," right? So I am Indy, but in Spanish, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was phenomenal, right? If the thing wasn't so beat up, I would have said to that guy, I give you $50 for that hat, right? And would have taken it from him right then. But all this is a way of saying the first thing you have to do, and it's what they've been trying to do all along, is what is IndyCar? I tell people that I do this podcast. I tell people that I'm an IndyCar fan. You know what? They either want to talk to me about Drive to Survive or Formula One in Miami, or they want to talk to me about NASCAR. Most casual observers have no idea what IndyCar is.
They don't.
And I know you're going to talk a little bit about it later, and I think you're 100% spot on. How do you differentiate an open wheel racing series that's uniquely American by racing on multiple types of courses, but it's got, a 10-year-old chassis, it's 2 engine manufacturers, but you don't really know it just by looking at it. It's not NASCAR, right? Even though you strip the decals off those cars, they're all the same. But at least the decals, it looks like a Camry, looks kind of like a Mustang, looks kind of like a Camaro, right?
Yeah.
And then
totally.
Formula One, they, this year they went a long way, and not purposely, but the cars look very similar this year, but there's no
question on what the Ferrari is versus the Red Bull,
Red Bull versus the Mercedes versus the Aston
versus
Martin
the McLaren.
Yeah. So, we're in IndyCar. Man, you strip the decals off of it, and you and I are fans, right? So you strip the decals off of it. Would you know it was, Scott Dixon or Joseph Newgarden in a car? going
I
around
think you got to
a
go
circuit.
back to your roots when you're looking at IndyCar. You got to go back to your roots, and your roots are innovation, technology, bringing new ideas, new
Mhm.
cars to the track, especially Indy, right? People show up within the rules, but they were always pushing the envelope. I don't see the envelope being pushed as much as it was back when I became a fan, and even prior to that, right? Um, and I think, and I say that, and some people might go, well, look at what Scott Dixon did with qualifying,
Yeah.
fastest qualifying time of all time, all record. But everything looks the
Anybody
same.
know it besides the people that already watch?
I don't think anybody knows that.
No.
Fastest qualifying 4 lap average in Indy 500 history.
100
Hmm,
plus years. Yeah.
100, yes. But I
So,
think
yeah.
the innovation part is something that really needs to turn in this
Yeah, we've
this
gotten away from
series.
that without a doubt. We've gotten away from it. The chassis thing bothers me more than the engine thing because I think the engine thing you can work with, right? Um, the 10-year-old chassis thing bothers me more than anything. It's
And for
not a
me,
good
it's
looking car. It's not sexy whatsoever. It's
mhm,
just becoming a Frankenstein model now because they've had so many retrofits and they had problems with it right out of the gate where the weight distribution was weird. So, on a profile, the profile is the only thing that makes the canopy look right. Aero screen makes the aero screen
mhm.
look right, but the profile of it from the aero screen down looks weird because they had to, you know,
It's a bolt on.
yeah, goof around with the wheelbase because of the goofy weight distribution right out of the gate.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then, they had the goof that it, they've struggled with this chassis and this thing needs to just be thrown in the trash and start fresh.
Yeah, and even when you got drivers saying that it's,
Mhm.
overweight, it's sluggish, it's not as quick
Yeah.
as it needs to be.
Yeah.
You need to make some improvements, and that should be
Yeah.
obviously one of the first things that gets done here. Which,
Yeah.
we're looking at the new engine coming and being fitted into the old chassis,
Yeah.
and then you're going to have a new chassis potentially, but you're still
At some point.
sticking with Deloro. You got one manufacturer. I'd love to see multiple chassis manufacturers to bring
So would I.
innovation back. I think innovation in technology is huge, whether it's
It
engine
gives you a
side or if it's
Yeah, it gives you a better marketing platform, right? It gives you
yeah.
something to talk about. And that's where I think, this marketing team and where some of the heat has kind of come from because it's very hard to distinguish. You're not the innovation leader, that's Formula 1. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a
No, you're not,
built-in
but you got to have
audience
some.
like NASCAR does and
Yeah.
three different manufacturers and
Mm-hmm.
drivers that means something, right? I mean, I would suspect that even walking around Carmel, Indiana, I would probably say that, Scott Dixon might be recognized by 4 or 5 out of 10 people seeing him at Trader Joe's or at Whole Foods.
Yeah, there's always talk about drivers having personalities, being able to be
Mhm.
recognized outside of their element, and having that fan base that sort of is attracted to the people that are in the IndyCar day in and day out. So it's tough to, have that happen in IndyCar. We've not seen that. I can only imagine with some of these drivers could probably go just about anywhere and not be recognized at all, right? They
Yeah.
just blend in with the average crowd.
I
So,
want Penske Entertainment to do something right here, and what I mean by that is to find somebody maybe who has a track record in motorsports who comes from outside Penske, right? Like I don't want somebody who, but God bless Bud Danker, right? He's done a fantastic job and he's a hell of an executive in this organization. But I don't want them to grab, whoever Chip Stone, who's got a 23-year-old career at Penske, whatever,
mhm,
and come in and assume marketing for Penske Entertainment just because we're comfortable with them,
yeah.
right? I want an uncomfortable hire here for them. I want them to take a chance because otherwise you're just going to get the same old, same old.
Yeah, that's definitely not what we need. So we need
Yeah,
to shake it up a little bit. And you heard it here. Dan is not on the market for this job. He's going to turn you
no,
down if you reach out to him. So find somebody
two
else. But that
million
would shake
five,
it up.
2 million 5 years guaranteed. I'd take that job.
See, I see how you work.
I'd take that
I
job.
almost called you Alex, but I didn't want
Yeah,
to call you Alex. All right, moving right along to Will Power is on the mend after a crash suffered in a karting accident. Apparently broke some of his ribs, but otherwise no long-term effects. Dan,
Tell me
why is
why.
the reigning IndyCar champion racing wheel to wheel on a karting track?
Tim, I wish I knew. I cannot, first of all, fathom Penske allowing that. Penske, Verizon, whoever, any of the other partners, his wife. I don't, I don't
Maybe
know.
that's the most important one, the wife.
Right? Yeah, not necessarily in that order, but I don't. How does that happen? Did you see the video on Twitter? His
I
like
did see
helmet
the
cam.
video.
What the hell was he doing?
Well, I think you got to keep your skills in line, right? You got to go out and you still got to go out and race, and you got to keep
iRacing
everything. I It's
simulator.
not real. I
Who
don't know.
cares?
Maybe the
This is too
simulators are.
real.
iRacing is. Yeah, I think the good thing is the silver lining is he's going to be okay, and I think at the same time, there's nothing wrong with going out and doing a little karting. Now, I don't know who the other guy is that just punted him off the track,
I know. Imagine
and
that guy. He almost got punched in the mouth. I'm sure because Will Power's a fighter.
that is true, but maybe the ribs were hurting way too bad. But yes, I think you sent it to me. That's how I saw it. And
Maybe
man, that was ugly for sure.
yeah.
I don't
It's
know what he's doing out
ridiculous.
there.
It's
So
ridiculous.
yeah, you think it's ridiculous he's out there?
Yeah.
But I think all these drivers do it. I don't think it's,
You know
remember
what good's gonna
Kyle
come out of
Larson? He
this?
was out doing the Chili Bowl. Some of these drivers go do the Chili Bowl where they're out there and they're in these caged midgets and they get hit and they roll and tumble and they break stuff. I think if it's in your blood, it's in your blood. That's what you want to do. And the off season
I
is so long.
guess
Maybe they need to shorten the off season. His off season's so long.
I'm
He's got to
with you
figure out
there.
what he's got to do.
Let's go to Argentina, Mexico, somewhere in Europe. Let's do something like that and extend
I
the
agree.
season.
Let's do it.
Hey, what I was going to say to you is what good's going to come out of this is it's going to be written into everybody's contract that you can't do this. And this isn't going to be a problem going forward.
Well, I think all professional athletes have some kind of clause. You can't do this. You can't, go around and ride a motorcycle. You can't do other things. But
Yeah.
apparently he's allowed to do some karting, or he was doing it behind the scenes and got caught. So not the way you want to have it happen if that is the case, which I don't.
Yeah, man.
I don't believe it is.
Broke a rib, man. Right?
I don't think it's going to have any impact on St. Pete or any race this year, but
No.
luckily he wasn't hurt a little more.
He's a tough guy. I have no doubt. Will Power's a tough guy. He broken back, broken leg, so he's a
All
tough
these
guy.
drivers go
I mean,
through something.
he's not as young as he used to be, but I mean, he's a tough guy. I mean, if anybody you feel like pretty good about it, I feel pretty good about Will shaking this thing off.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Lastly, I want to touch on the overall health of the series and something that is an indicator, and it comes down to viewership. So this is from Racer and Marshall Pruitt, a response to a writer in the mailbag this past week. But some very interesting stuff came up in this. First, NBC said that IndyCar had a year-to-year audience increase of 5%, so over last year, and an average of 1.3 million viewers across 17 races. Now, when you look at this, right, it looks really impressive, but it's heavily skewed by Indianapolis, right? When you look at Indianapolis in the 500, they drew 4.62 million viewers. And this is in comparison to Formula One, right? So they're taking a comparison of what IndyCar did versus what Formula One did. And right after the season ended, ESPN released a article about Formula One and saying the 2022 Formula One World Championship season was the most viewed ever in the US television market. The season averaged 1.21 million viewers per race across their entire gamut of networks, ESPN, ESPN2, ABC, which was a 28% increase over 2021. So a huge lift in viewership. And a thing that sort of pointed out, you look at this and you go, oh, IndyCar's doing really well, right? They have 1.3 million viewers. You have Formula One, 1.2. They beat it out. But it's that Indy 500 that skews that. The other thing that they said about Formula One, they have more female and younger viewers watch F1 races on US television than ever before. So they're drawing in a fresh crowd.
They are, without a doubt.
I think looking at this, and you look at this, you go, okay, F1 is on TV, and I'm paraphrasing some of the stuff that happened here, but F1 is on TV early in the morning and super in the early in the morning for people in the West Coast, and they have driven viewership way up. Where IndyCar is on Prime Network most of the time, so it's on network stations, and they are in the right time slot for people to watch. So there's something really, it's a telling story that Formula One is growing huge in the US. IndyCar is not. Things need to change. I think some of this that you're hearing here is related to we need to remarket ourselves, reinvent ourselves. So the question is, why do I bring this up? I think it's important to know that US exposure and adoption to F1 and what's happening to IndyCar. F1 is sexy, right? Don't you think it's sexy? Super sexy. And even though IndyCar's on-track racing far exceeds F1, I think you can agree to that. Our on-track racing exceeds F1. But it really begs
definitely on. Yeah, exceeds F1.
Yeah, totally does. But it really begs the question: what can IndyCar do to drive additional viewers? Iowa seemed like a slam dunk last year, right? Seemed like a slam dunk going into 2023 until ticket prices went super high through the roof. We already talked about this a little bit. Technology is stagnant in IndyCar. We have the old car, only one manufacturer of a chassis. We have a new engine that's been delayed. Lack of new venues. We talked about that just a little bit ago. And let's add it again. We have got a long off season.
Yeah. One thing I'll tell you, I think Formula One could step on their own foot is with these dynasties, right? You went from 4 years of Red Bull winning the championship to 7 years of Mercedes winning the championship to 2 years of Red Bull winning it so far now. If that continues, right, and the media darling, Lance or Lando Norris doesn't get a lot of TV time, if Daniel Ricciardo is taking a reserve role next year, he's not going to get a lot of time. Charles Leclerc, if Ferrari stumbles, which, I mean, let's face it, I don't want to get derailed here on this thing, but Ferrari's problems with strategic calls is already, it still continues in the off season by accepting Mattia Binotto's resignation. So, but anyway, I think that's where, to me, doing this and being an IndyCar fan, but somebody who's a motorsport fan, that's where I look at where Formula One could have a problem. If that continues, and that generally tends to be the case, there's no more sport in the US that's more popular than NASCAR, right?
Yep.
Jeff Gordon was reviled for all those championships.
Yep.
Winning everything, reviled, right?
Yep, totally.
So it's easy and especially this younger audience. I don't know about your company. My company, we spend a lot of time talking about this younger audience. A lot of time talking about, Gen Z, millennials. We talk a lot of time about these. They're finicky. They will walk away from you fast.
Yeah, they're not loyal, right?
No. And they have very short attention span.
That is true.
Right? They make me look like the thinker. And I have no attention span.
Too funny.
So I think that's, I mean, everything you bring up is absolutely relevant, right? But I think it can fall just as quickly because of what it's built on, right? It's built on Drive to Survive that came out during the pandemic. So we all fell in love with it, with Formula One. We've got, sexy cars and, is the racing fun? I don't know. From weekend to weekend, it's really not. Yeah. Sometimes you fall kind of surprisingly into this year, for example, me, right? I was like, I don't remember Brazil being that an interesting of a race. Right. And Brazil was very interesting this year. Yeah, it was, right. It was Russell George's first win.
Sure was. A Mercedes won.
Right.
It didn't seem like a big deal though, which was interesting.
Big deal. It was a big deal, but it was.
I know.
But it was a fun race to watch. They're not always that way. And like you and I
No, they're
always say,
not.
right? When you sit down to watch Formula One, it's gonna be Max, maybe somebody else,
Yeah, maybe.
and they're gonna get bored with that.
Yeah, I think they will, and I think I guess the question is, how does IndyCar capitalize on those that may defect, right, from Formula One, and how do they attract them? And they don't necessarily have to defect; they just have to come over and watch some IndyCar races, and I think they'd
Yeah.
be really impressed with the action on the track if that's what they're tuning in for. Not really sure if everybody's tuning in for that, honestly.
Yeah, I was watching. Here you go. My attention span is bad, but I'm going somewhere with this. I was watching Sunday Night Football last night,
Hmm.
and in the second half, they put up an ad for tonight's Monday Night Football on ESPN. That ad was on NBC. If you're an IndyCar, wouldn't you buy something? During that
I
hour
think
and
you
a
would.
half Formula One pre-race show, because the
Absolutely.
races are all commercial free, right? So why wouldn't you
Yeah,
put
yeah.
something up in that
Sponsored
pre-race
by
show?
mothers.
Yeah. Or immediately following the race when they first go to commercial break. Why wouldn't you put something
Yeah,
up? A
I would
sexy
totally.
ad showing the car, even if it's just Indianapolis. Sexy ad, fast speeds, Pato
Hmm.
Award, Alex Pillow, Marcus Erickson. Those are camera ready faces, right?
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you do that?
I think you need to. It
Absolutely.
makes total
I
sense. If
want
you
that
want to
job now.
capitalize on some of those viewers,
I
you
want
want
that
the
job
job
now.
now.
I want the job now.
5-year
I don't. I
guarantee
would.
and
I'd say 2 years, 2 million. I'd take it.
very good. Well, I
Two
think there's a
years.
lot to
Two
be
years,
done on
half
the
a million,
IndyCar
and we
side.
could put escalators in it based on performance.
And
I'm used to working. I've worked on commission before. I'm fine with
you're all good with that.
it.
Well, we'll see what happens. But Dan, that's all I got tonight. What do you got?
I want to talk about Ferrari.
Let's talk about
Like
Ferrari.
I
What's the
said,
latest?
Ferraris. We have roasted Ferrari all season for bad strategic calls on track. Off track and off season, they've made a bad strategic call. They have either asked for or somehow influenced Mattia Binotto to resign as team principal of Ferrari.
You think that's a bad move?
Yes. You know why?
I don't. I'm dying to hear.
There's no apparent backfill.
Well, you gotta have a
Do you,
plan. If you don't have a
they
plan, then
didn't. They don't
that's
have a plan, Tim. This was a week and a half ago. They accepted it, and they have nobody there yet.
well, he's
Wouldn't
been
you
with the
think? Wouldn't
organization
you
for 20
think?
plus years.
Yeah, his entire career. Wouldn't you think
Hmm.
that would be the most coveted job in the Formula One paddock? Formula One
I
team
would think so.
principal for Ferrari?
I would think so.
They approached
Storied
Christian Horner,
history.
apparently. He said no. They've approached other people who've said, no, thanks. You know why? Because of this, right? 14 principals in 8 years, I think is the number. Because of this, right? First of all, they don't know who they are
Hmm.
anymore. They were
Seems that way.
finding themselves this year. And it wasn't because of happenstance. It was because Mattia Binotto had been in there for several years, had said, look, we've got a plan. It's not going to come together quickly, and you're just going to have to be patient. They were the better car this year, the first part of this year. They
Yep.
got tripped up a lot in strategic moves on track. That's something that you can clean up in the off season. I think pretty strongly you can clean that up in the off season.
I think you can clean it up mid-season too, and
Maybe,
they didn't.
maybe, but just throwing the baby out with the bathwater and throwing away the team principal, who also had a heavy hand in the technology side of this, especially the engine side of this.
Hmm.
Tim, bad move for Ferrari. Bad move for Ferrari. It's curious they don't have somebody there yet. They don't, because they would have announced it right away. They had to. And I think
Hmm.
part of the reason why they have trouble finding somebody is because it doesn't work like anybody else. Those other Formula One teams, and I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, they're Formula One teams, right? Ferrari has a massive budget. Now everybody has a budget cap. But at the end of the day, there's a couple of people there, right? There's a CEO on the Ferrari side. There's a CEO right on the Stellantis side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're part of that group.
Yeah.
What they need to do is they need to just say, you want to do this? We're Ferrari. You want to be in Formula racing? We know how to do this. We'll keep you posted. Because they earn enough money to manage that program themselves, and nobody goes into Formula One racing to make money. Let's face it. Okay, but Ferrari earns enough money to be in that top tier without having a lot of influence from a board at Stellantis. Look at Renault. That's what screwed them. Look at Honda. That's what screwed them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the problem here. You know, people like Christian Horner, Total Wolf, why they're so successful, they don't report to anybody. They reported to one guy, the Dieter Mateschitz, the founder of Red Bull, but he gave him all the authority in the world and kept it together.
He said, go ahead and go do it. Yep.
Yeah. Total Wolf, he's part owner in that team. So the decisions that he makes, he's fully vested in the decisions there. It's not the same case at Ferrari. This is a bad move for them. Bad move for them.
Interesting. Very insightful, Dan. I guess we'll see what 2023 brings for them, who they actually bring it on. We'll have to follow it closely and see.
Gerhard Berger.
Gerhard Berger? Is that
I just read that, and in somewhere, it might have been Motorsport or something had that. It's funny because when I saw the headline, or maybe, no, it was the race.com. I saw the headline, and I swear to you, as soon as I was reading the headline, I was like, it's Gerhard Berger. So I opened up the link and looked, and I didn't even read it. I just kind of scanned it, and I'm like, yep, there he is. And I closed it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. We'll see.
Well,
but
we will see.
Nobody wants that job.
Just crazy. That sounds like an awesome job for sure. But a lot of people to report to, and a lot of responsibility comes with that. And the winning heritage of Ferrari needs to come back for sure for Formula One to sustain where they're at. Dan, anything else?
That's all I got. It's good to see you.
All right. It's good to see you. I thought you were throwing in a happy birthday, but it looks like you're not.
We got to wish a happy birthday to the mayor of Hinchtown.
Oh, that's
James
what we still have.
Hinchcliffe, friend of the show.
Had a birthday, huh, today?
Happy birthday, Mr. Mayor.
Happy birthday. All right, that's it for us today. Engage with us on social media. Consider becoming a patron supporter. And look at us at Twitter, Instagram, and on our website, www.turn4podcast.com.
And TikTok.
And TikTok. We're on there too. And then, of course, our YouTube channel. Appreciate everybody listening. You all take care.
Thanks now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great job, Timmy.